Welcome and thank you very much for joining us for the fifth episode of YCP's new virtual monthly series, Refiner's Fire. I'm Peter Blute, and it's my pleasure to be with you as your host today. I have the privilege of working at Young Catholic Professionals as Vice President, and I'm really excited to be joining you today to talk about this awesome topic of finance for the non-finance professional. Every month, Catholic business leaders from diverse industries share professional and spiritual wisdom in a 30-minute live session here with us on Refiner's Fire. We call this a micro interview series. In spite of the short length of these segments, we hope the tips and insights will be really valuable and powerful for all of us as we strive to work in witness for Christ. So let's talk briefly about the name of the series, Refiner's Fire. The phrase actually comes from scripture from the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 2, where we learn that God is, quote, like a refiner's fire, who seeks to purify us and make us the best we can be. And that's the whole point of the series. Through the inspiration and wisdom of these exceptional Catholic leaders, we're challenged to improve in small ways in our professional and spiritual lives. Topics each month will be really relevant and helpful, like how to improve our public speaking, how to improve our professional etiquette and executive presence. So let's be open to this journey of refinement so that in everything we do it aiming for that higher standard of excellence that gives glory to God. Our topic this month, as I mentioned, is finance for the non-finance professional. Financial health is critical to the success and health of the company you work for. So regardless of whether you're in the accounting department or not, your team will benefit from your understanding of the basics of things like budgeting, expenses, and revenue streams. By understanding finance, you can determine what you need to do to best contribute to the success of your team or business and the value that you bring to the company you work for. In our lives, too, we also need to properly understand how to value things, such as time, family, faith, and giving. We need to be able to sit down, examine, and review honestly how much time and resources we're allocating to each of these things, and regularly be ready to readjust them as needed. So whether you're a teacher or an HR professional, a police officer, or from any of the other countless professions and industries present here at YCP, we know that there'll be something for you to take away from my conversation today with Mario Enzler. I'm really excited to introduce him now. Dr. Mario Enzler is a former musician, Swiss Guard, Swiss banker, and tax lawyer. He previously wanted to introduce authentic gelato to New England, but instead he and his wife founded a classical curriculum academy in New Hampshire after finding inadequate education options for their 5 children when they arrived there from Europe in 2010. In 2016, he joined the faculty at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., and since 2020, he has been the Dean of the Cameron School of Business at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. You can often find Mario leading workshops or speaking at conferences and men's retreats, where he shares about the role Pope St. John Paul II and St. Mother Teresa had in helping him become a better man, executive, teacher, leader, but most of all, practicing Catholic. Mario's last book is I Served a Saint, about his experience serving Pope St. John Paul II while he was in the Swiss Guard. Welcome, Mario. We are thrilled to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here, especially today, May 18th, which is St. Pope John Paul II's birthday, and also my wife's birthday. So imagine the man that I served for 40 months as a Swiss Guard and the woman that I've been married for 28 years, they share the same birthday.
Well, how perfect is that?
Yeah.
What a great way to start off the conversation in celebration. So we know St. John Paul II is with us today, and I'm sure your wife is perhaps with us virtually as well.
Amen. Yes.
So let's go ahead and get right to it, Mario. So as a professional, why would you recommend this topic is important for us? Why should it matter to us?
Well, I will dare to say today that knowing financials, knowing and understanding finance is definitely one of the essential skills in any business, okay? And as non-financial professional, okay, people, especially young adults, they need to quickly understand and quickly distinguish good information from poor quality information. Otherwise, Peter, their decision may adversely affect business performances, their career prospect growth, and so on and so forth. And so to me, I can tell you today that the purpose of finance, especially for us Catholics, is to help people do three things and three things only: to save, to manage, and to raise money. And if I can grab on this, I can say that articulating the purpose of finance with these three actions helps to clarify for us, for everybody, the role and the work of professionals, financial and non-professional, so that instead of having this idea, this fuzzy connection in our minds that finance equal money, okay, which always leads Peter to the mistake of finance equal money equal as much for me, okay. I think today, with our beloved followers, we should have this more corrected connection in our mind, that I'm going to dare to say it bluntly: finance equal helping people with their money. And this is what the most successful people in the financial world do. And they do it with discipline. Because despite what you read all over the world or over the media, financial people are disciplined people, because discipline is made up of what I call basic tools that we use when we are coping without even knowing with our life's problems, with our life's challenges, and basically without discipline, we cannot solve a thing, right? And what did finance do to me? What can I dare to share with you guys? What did finance did to me after 20 years into the banking industry, and now for the past 4 years into business education, where finance did to me and taught to me, number one, to work harder than anyone else. Number two, to be careful about the thoughts that I allow to occupy my mind. Number three, to value my time, but most of all, the time of others. And number four, to refrain from blaming others. In other words, rediscover the meaning of the word accountability, which, Peter, by the way, it's ironic because my mother tongue is Italian, and in Italian, we don't even have the word accountability, because in Italy, it's responsibility. But you very well know, because you lived in Rome, you know the Italian culture, all right? Responsibility different than accountability. But anyway, so sorry it took me more than 1 minute to give you an answer, but I think I open it up a little so that everybody understands that despite what they're doing, the way they're doing it and why they're doing it, knowing financial is one of the essential skills in business.
Yeah, let's just summarize what you've said there, because I think this really does lay the foundation for the rest of our conversation today. So you mentioned first three focal points. I think these are important, and I think they're well articulated: to save, to manage, and to raise money. And we can look at all three of those, you're saying, by taking a step back, taking a step kind of outside of ourselves, and realizing that all three of those ends are not for us individually, but collectively, let's say for our community, right? So this could be as simply as saving, managing, and raising money to somehow support my roommates or my family, of course, which is a major component of our role as fathers and mothers. We just got done with our conference on St. Joseph, and St. Joseph absolutely was clear on the role that a limited amount of resources make in his role as a father and as a husband and as a protector of Jesus and Mary. So, to save, to manage, and to raise money, how can we as individuals be thinking about our role and those that we touch around us, those directly in our households and those maybe out in our communities that we can support? And then you also talked about how really when we're thinking about finance and the value of money, I mean, you're saying that we can think about this in terms of almost virtues in a way. I mean, you talked about not blaming others, respecting other people's time, working harder than everyone else. So I love that we've dialed this out a little bit to look at finance in a wider sense than just a balance sheet at the end of the day. So let's jump then to our next question here. So why are financial analytical skills important for professionals, including non-finance professionals? So for example, let's say that I'm not in a finance role at my company. Um, how does understanding the basics of maybe my team's budget or what our major expenses are, what our revenue streams are, at least at a high level, how does that help me perform better as a member of the team, even if I don't have maybe any decision-making authority in that area?
Well, as I said before, you need to speak the language of finance if you want to succeed in any business. Okay. That's why I always encourage liberal arts students, STEM students to take personal finance classes in college, okay, so that their sinuses, can open up to absorb the technicality, okay. But understanding, so this is my answer to you, understanding the numbers in any business, Peters, opens up a world of opportunity, because you and I first and everybody else, we all need to get a grip on the figures, as we say in finance, okay, without needing a lengthy and expensive formal qualification for doing that, profit and loss. In other words, if we are making money or if we are losing money, what it's always used as P&L, very important. How much money I have, basically. Okay, so having this profit and loss knowledge, for instance, Peter, is definitely today the most important responsibility in any job, in any business. Knowing how much money we have that we can spend, it's the most important responsibility. And having such knowledge involves a little bit of sacrifice, because you have to ask questions, you have to monitor the net income after expenses, you need to ask to understand the resources that the company has. You need, in other words, to get out of your comfort zone so that you can actively participate in the growth, contributing to the narrative of the business of your activity that you are fully in. In other words, I always say, Peter, to students that when you interview, for instance, for a job, okay, you need to always to demonstrate several skills, because nobody only looks at a CV. Okay. Yes, you can have a nice tie like I have right now, a Giorgio Armani tie. Okay. Or you can show that you have technical and what we call them soft skills. Technical skills are, business analysis, quantitative analysis, expertise in sales, and so on and so forth. And the soft skills instead are the most important, at least for me, are what we call time management, empathy, among others. And you need these two things in order to land a job. But if you don't have a clear understanding of the finance language, sooner or later, you're going to find an obstacle and you're not going to be able to move on. All right. So that's why I believe that having an interest in our domestic dwelling as husband and wife, in our work environment, no matter where we are. We need to speak the language of finance so that we will be successful accomplishing whichever task God gives us.
And I can imagine for many of our followers who maybe have been with their company for some time or in their particular role for some time, that this could present an opportunity to show additional value that you bring to your team. I mean, if whether you're an analyst in your first job out of college, or whether you're rising into maybe middle management, or just have an increasing set of responsibilities on your team, taking that time to maybe take some of the free online classes that exist around understanding basic financial statements, also just following the news about your company, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, just taking the time. I mean, you can maybe sit in on shareholder calls if you have a publicly traded company or things like that, to understand the direction, high level of the company that you work for. And then going to your maybe immediate manager and just saying, I'd love to have a conversation to better understand our team's budget or the largest expenses or areas where I may be able to make some kind of small impact to decrease what it costs our team to do the work we do, or how we can do it more efficiently. I can imagine a manager just saying, wow, this is someone who's really thinking on a different level here. They have no authority in this, but they want to play a small role in the larger objectives of our team. I mean, as someone who has done some hiring and does manage a team, and I'm sure you would say the same in your experience. If someone came to you and asked that question, I mean, that would be astounding. I mean, what an
Absolutely.
opportunity to engage them more deeply in the success of your team.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And to me is, this specificity of saying there is a spirituality within numbers, okay? There is a theology, as a matter of fact, within numbers, okay? So it is our duty to try to understand them, okay? And so, when you are a team player, you need to know, okay, so how much money can we spend? Why do we have this amount of money? Who is in charge? What happens if we don't spend at all? What happens if we need more? So those are all questions that we have to not be afraid of asking, so that we can contribute to authentically succeed in whichever mission we are in pursuit of.
So let's shift to another question here, maybe a little bit more on the personal finance side, being stewards of our own finances, whether that's individually or perhaps for our family or our local community there. What are some recommendations that you would suggest those of us in our 20s and 30s that are getting started with things like saving for retirement, saving to buy a house, maybe saving to buy a new car, basic investing? Where do we start, knowing that there often seems like hundreds, if not thousands, of choices, and we may feel overwhelmed? What are some of the basics that you recommend for getting started?
Well, Peter, I, as Mario Enzler, I have failed more times than I can count with money, okay? But the only way that I have been able to get back on track, to get my finances back in order, is always been to go back and rework the budget. So this is my first answer, Peter. Budget, it's where we start, because if we don't budget, if on authentically budget and stick to it, we have no idea how much money we have or we don't have. And a budget, now I don't want to sound too spiritual here, but a budget, and this is why I'm telling you this is where we start, a budget is the focus of trust and confidence in God when times are both plentiful and hard, because it is a practical prayer for God's provision through Jesus' promise when he said, and I wrote it and I quoted, I'm going to read it to you, your heavenly Father knows that you need all things, end of quote, okay? And so because God knows, well, we need to know as well, Peter, right? If God knows, I need to know as well. And without budget, Peter, I have no idea. Oh yeah, like an Italian. Oh, the wind is blowing. No, you need to know. In other words, Peter, this is where we start. We start with budgeting because we may think that we need new clothes, a new car, a bigger house, but without actually sitting down and figuring out the cost, guess what? We don't know if we have the money to afford doing that. So I want to encourage everybody here today that if they are struggling, for instance, to figure out where God is leading them with money, I will encourage them to first pray and then make a budget. First pray and then make a budget and allow the Holy Spirit to guide you in where your abundant blessing will flow. It's through a budget that you'll accumulate saving that you will learn to manage. You will learn to manage the money. You will download apps on your phone like Robinhood. We all love that app. We all love to buy money. We get upset when we lose. We enjoy when we gain. It's through budgeting that we will be able to have that path upon which walk.
And there's a bunch of great tools out there. I know a few I've seen in the past, like Mint, Personal Capital. I know most of the major banks through their online platforms have access to budgeting tools. There's some great free tools out there that we can use.
Absolutely.
Some people are going to want to just create a spreadsheet, but others may want something a little more interactive that also pulls your credit card transactions and categorizes them for you to look at your spending, your actual spending to budget. So there's some great tools out there. But basically you're saying budgeting is the first thing you have to do before you look at your 401k, before you look at investing in the stock market, before you look at saving for anything. You have to know what's coming in and what's going out, right?
Absolutely. You have to know exactly what's coming in, what's going out. And as you just said, today, you don't have to do a spreadsheet. You can, but today, you're any bank that you are a client, they have an app, okay? And you can link that app, okay, through a budget, that the budget is done through your bank statements, Peter, okay? And then the app tells you, Peter, you've been drinking too much coffee this month. What are you spending money from that you didn't budget? And then you'll have your wife and children say, Daddy, beloved Peter, why are you spending so much money for coffee that now we cannot afford toilet paper? I'm trying to be sarcastic. But as you understand, all of those apps are out there. Let's not be lazy. Let's not be lazy, and technology finally can help us. Okay, let's make sure that that's the case. And then the abundant, the reservoir has to be put at work. Okay, so it's absolutely essential that money gets put to work. Because what did Jesus say in the Gospel of Matthew to the guy that just put one coin on the ground? You fool. You need to put the money at work.
Exactly. And just a reminder to our audience, we are ready to take questions from you. You can type in the comments section on either platform that you're on. Just a reminder as well for those that RSVP'd for the event and also ask a question, you get entered into a chance to win a one-on-one coaching call with Mario. He's been kind enough to offer that, and we're really excited for one of you to win that. So go ahead and start typing in your questions here. And I do want to, maybe while we're waiting for a couple questions to come up, very briefly, Mario, talking about being good stewards of our money, can you share anything perhaps from your interactions with St. John Paul II or with, in your work working at the Vatican with the finances through your banking career? I mean, how can we really think about being stewards of whatever we're given, whether it's $5 that we're able to give or share with others or $5,000?
Well, Peter, once I was in the Apostolic Palace, and I witnessed John Paul II that was talking to a group of financiers, as a matter of fact. And he said to them that finance is unquestionably a sphere of life in which people are subject to specific temptation, exactly like politics or even priests are callings with their own potential pitfalls, okay? And so based on that, I've been pondering about the fact that finance is a lieu, Peter, where moral choices are made on a daily life. And so through this analysis, I feel comfortable sharing that money is a good instrument because it's a means to order one's freedom and to expand one's possibilities. And so the financial sectors, the financial conundrum, the financial activities are also something positive insofar as they engage in what? In circulating the capital, right? Okay. So I could talk for hours, Peter, about the ways in which the financial market realize this goal by, managing risk, engaging in the formation of prices, putting capital to work in efficient ways, and blah, blah, and blah, blah, and blah, blah. And about the fact that the absence of these elements, okay, if these activities were not pursued, we will all be living materially poor and considerably shorter lives, okay? So the answer to stewardship, the answer to what are we called? Well, if I need to sum it down, I would say that anyone in finance who wants to live a morally good life must recognize that good relationship, especially financial relationship, are built upon people's good use of what? Of their freedom. And that while economic logic is at place, it cannot be captured without a deep understanding of the human dignity. And put it another way, Peter, without the right understanding of the human person, we cannot establish sound ethics, right? And without sound ethics, the economy will not be an arena of human flourishing. And if you get human anthropology wrong, everything else goes wrong,
right?
Especially finance. All right. So we need to understand that every financial gifts and talents that we have, it's been given to us from God for the good of the church.